Hello YouTube, I know it's been a while since my last video. Don't have a good reason for why. Guess I just haven't had any thoughts for the past 2 months. But I have now, so here we go. Objective morality in the gay church. Now before we even begin the discussion of this, we have to get through the boring philosophical stuff. So here's a relatively philosophical mundane definition for objectivity. A proposition is objectively true when its truth conditions are mind independent. In other words, not based on the judgments of conscious minds. In other words, objective truths are those that are discovered rather than created. They are presented to the consciousness rather than being the products of the consciousness, such as your feelings or your thoughts. Off topic for discussion today is the implications that this relatively mundane and widely accepted definition of objectivity has on religious morality. In other words, if God's the conscious mind, then doesn't that by definition make religious morality subjective? Because it's based on God's conscious mind. We will also not be going into the question of whether it's even feasible to have an objective morality. Anybody who thinks that that is feasible is beyond my assistance, and it would just be a long, boring philosophical discussion. All we need to take away from this definition of objectivity is that if X were objectively immoral, it would be immoral despite the judgments of conscious minds, i.e. eternally immoral. Currently, the overwhelming religious position is that morality is objective, homosexuality is wrong, slavery is wrong, racism is wrong, sexism is wrong. Of course, you already see the contradiction there. Most of these religions were perfectly okay with racism, sexism, and slavery in the past. If morality is objective, that means what is moral today will continue to be moral because its immorality is independent of all our judgments. In other words, religious morality could not possibly be objective because it contradicts its own objective moral. No doubt some theologically sensitive soul is protesting, attempting to offer some justification for historic atrocities based on the people of the time. That's exactly my point. If religious morality were objective, it would by definition be independent of everyone around it. Which of course it isn't. Religious morality, like all morality, changes with the time as people make new ethical agreements. Religious morality has a tendency to follow cultural morality. And because of this tendency, I have looked into the future and would like to make a few predictions. I predict a future in which homosexuality is socially acceptable and homophobia is not. A future in which your own descendants are embarrassed by you corrupting pure religion and God's true word, and use your personal immorality, bigotry, insensitivity, stupidity, or ignorance to excuse religion, to say that God never really hated gay people at all. A future in which the church will do everything it can to avoid the appearance of being anti-gay, in the same way they do now with being anti-woman or anti-minority. In other words, I see a gay church explosion in the future. Many gay pastors and gay nuns. Gay nuns. That's funny. Of course, I also know that in the future there will still be idiots arguing for objective morality, but can't be helped.